Going to show you how to deploy a Rails application onto Serverless in this video, and we're going to deploy it to AWS Lambda. We're going to be using Jets here, so to do this, we're going to first click on Getting Started here, and it's under Rails. The very first step is to generate a brand new Rails project. So we're going to start from scratch with nothing, and we're going to get this onto AWS Lambda. So I'm going to grab that, Rails new demo, and I'm going to use the database MySQL here in this video, but other databases and everything is supported. So that's generating a brand new Rails project. And once that's generated, I'm going to rename that demo folder into Rails here, just so I can have that folder as Rails. Move demo and then to Rails and cd into it. Okay, so I think I got past, yes, this first step. Next is we're going to scaffold. So we're going to use this scaffold command to generate like a CRUD essential application. And I'm just doing the kind of boilerplate Rails stuff right now. And here we're going to add a home route. So let's go and open that up because I believe the scaffold was already going to add this right here. You just have to uncomment out. Okay, so all I did was add basically a home route here. And then now we're going to do migrations. Okay, so previously I actually created the database already, so I'm going to drop the database. Yeah, and then I'm going to go and create again. So rake db create db migrate. Okay, so brand new database there with a table. And I do want to seed some data here, so I'm going to grab that code and go into the seeds.rb here and just paste it in here and go Rails db seed. So now that gives me some data. So Rails, I guess runner post count. So you can see there's 2 records in there, okay? So those are the records I seeded. So far, all I've done is generate a Rails application, okay? Next is we're gonna do some local testing. So just to make sure that things are working, let's just start up a Rails server here and then go and open it up. And you can see here's the post that we created. We can show the post. I guess you can go in there and edit it if we want to, right? We create a new post. Let's go back to post, create a new post, post 3, body 3, create posts. Okay, and you could destroy the post and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so that kind of thing takes us through this page of the guide. Yeah, so next up, now this is where it gets a little more interesting. We are going to finally install Jets here. Okay, and to do that, first I'm going to stop that server and I'm going to open up gem file and then throw this up here. Okay, so you need to add those lines to your gem file and then you run bundle. Okay, and that's going to install Jets and the Jets Rails plugin. Essentially is a very lightweight engine to help Jets and Rails kind of work together there. So that gives us to a pretty good state. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually commit this code right here. First commit, so we kind of have just like a stake, a checkpoint. And now we're going to run just init. And just init, that's going to generate some like boilerplate starter configs for us. And you can see it says it detected the Rails framework. And it's going to initialize the project. It will make some changes to your project source code. So please back up and commit your changes first, which I already did. Okay, and then basically Y enter. And you can see the files that I basically kind of added. So it added these files right here, and the docs do kind of cover what the files do. Basically, there's like a project RB file that mainly controls the project name. It looks something like this. Let's kind of open it, I guess, as we go along here. So I'm going to open this guy. And you can see just the name is Rails. So the reason why I wanted to rename the name from demo, the folder, from demo to Rails, is this is actually inferred from the parent folder name when I ran Jets init. Okay, but if let's say you have a different folder name, just change this to Rails, then it'll be easier to follow this kind of video guide. Okay. Then Bootstrap's the next one. So I'm opening up Bootstrap here, and I'll open up this way too. Okay, so in Bootstrap, you can see it just gives you some starter plate, basically configurations, and it's all commented out. But I'm gonna I'm gonna uncomment it and use all the settings. Now you're probably not gonna have a Docker host and all this other stuff kind of ready if you're kind of using it for the first time. I've already have it set up, so it's gonna speed up at least the deployment for this video. But let me talk about some of these configurations. So bundle github __, and that is 2 underscores, okay? Com. Basically, if you have private gems in your gem file, this is going to allow Bundler to clone them down and install them, okay? So that's the recommended way of installing private gems via gem file. You just set this environmental variable. And you do that so basically your token keys don't get added to your gem file lock. Okay, so you should use environment variables. And you're gonna probably need, or you're gonna need the Docker user and Docker pass too. That essentially tells Jets to log into Docker Hub, because what Jets does is it's gonna use Docker to build your dependencies and build your application to deploy it. And when you're pulling in images from Docker Hub, you're probably gonna run to a rate limit unless you kind of have this set, okay? So you do need that. So I think that looks good for the Bootstrap. Let's go see what else these docs kind of have here. It talks about the deployment.rb. Okay, so this is the probably the file that you're going to eventually configure the most when you want to customize and control and tell Jets what to do in order to handle deployment. And you can see it just all comment out lines showing you some examples. Like this example right here is just saying that you Jets can deploy a CloudFront distribution in front of your Lambda function URL here kind of automatically, and configure it to your ACM cert and add the Route 53 records and everything. Now it's kind of up to you how much of that you want to use, or whether or not you want to do it manually. Jets essentially just automates that process for you with essentially just a couple of configuration flags. Here's another CloudFront distribution that Jets can create. Just this is a asset, a cloud distribution designed for assets, because most Rails applications, when you deploy it to essentially and get production ready, you want to serve your static assets like CSS files and kind of images off of distribution or off of CDN. And most people, when you have time, you kind of do this. But this is the kind of cool thing. Jets essentially automates this entire process for you right there. So you just unset those or uncomment those configurations, and Jets will compile your assets, upload to S3, create a CloudFront distribution, and serve those assets via the CloudFront distribution to your S3 bucket. Okay. Here's the release phase. So this is a concept borrowed from Heroku. Essentially allows you to run any arbitrary command you want as part of the deployment sequence. So this is just showing you that you can run the rate db migrate command as part of deploying, so then you don't ever forget to do that. This is pretty cool scaling. So with serverless and stuff, and AWS Lambda, you actually worry not really about scaling. You worry about containing scaling, because if you don't have limits, then it scales to essentially your count limit. And for most people, that defaults around 1,000. So you probably want to configure some kind of scaling kind of actually limits. And these are actually the defaults of Jets right here. At least now, provision is not default 1, that's 0, but reserve is 25 as a controller. And Jets has some reasonable defaults, which you completely override, or completely, if you want to, remove the limits entirely. Okay. Here's how you configure IAM policies. So if your application needs access to other AWS services, then you don't have to actually hard code AWS credentials or anything like that. No, instead you just define some IAM kind of policies with code, and then Justice can actually create and manage those IAM policies for you, and use what's called IAM role in order to allow your application access here. And this is pretty neat too. Config Docker file. So Jets generates a Docker file for you and then uses that to build your application. So you have a lot of ways to hook in that Docker file, including telling what packages you want to install. So this allows you to install essentially any arbitrary package you want and build your image to your kind of needs there. Okay. The last one, I'll even cover really briefly. Maybe I should do another video covering this. But basically, Jets job enable will enable active job support for Jets, which is basically is going to create an SQS queue and allow you to use the Jets job adapter and then kind of handle all your job processing on serverless. Basically, the queue and the Lambda functions are all going to be automatically created and handle the background jobs for you. Okay. So funny, for this video, we don't actually need any of this, but just explaining some of the comments here. And a lot of this are in the documentation here, so you can kind of, I guess, go through that. So let's go back to here and see what the next step is here. So next step is configuring AWS credentials. So I'm not going to go through this entire process here. Hopefully this documentation helps though. And I actually wrote this documentation in a way where instead of just running AWS configure, I'm showing you what that command actually does underneath the hood. It just really just writes these two files. So just if you have some issues with your AWS access, just check these files and check for the structure and format and everything. Okay. Next is database prerequisite. So I'm not going to go through the entire process of a database, but you do need a database that is accessible to Lambda. Okay. And so here are instructions to kind of show you how I will basically set up. And it also shows you that I'm going to use SSM parameters to store the secret database credentials and everything, so that when you deploy, it has access to kind of the database credentials and is configured in kind of a secure way that's also centralized. Okay, and none of this is basically going to be on your, in your repo or anything, right? Everything needs to be kind of configured in a secure way. And then there is a command here that's pretty useful, like jet.list here, .env list, and I'm just gonna run it so you can see. Basically, I've configured this already, and you use the reveal flag to show you the variables and stuff too. And I do want to point out that some of these commands, of these SMS values, come from the AWS account, and some of them come from basically this .env file right here. So these are basically, those are gonna be the same. When you're running Rails on Lambda, you basically have to run in production mode, okay? You're not gonna be able to run in development mode. Lambda has like a read-only file system. There's other things that will result in you having to run in production mode only, which kind of makes sense actually. And so these two values come from that file, but the other values actually come from the SMS account. So maybe AWS SMS, get parameters by path, okay, and then I'll just go Rails and then dev, okay. So you're gonna see the parameters here. I have Rails dev, and when I run jet.env list here, it actually gets and removes kind of this conventional prefix. All this is overridable, okay, all this behavior. But this is just a way to kind of encourage you to keep your AWS account organized and kind of well maintained, okay. So that's basically, some parameters are coming basically from the path right there. It says it right there in the comment, and some from your files here. And this is kind of a convenience command that kind of just provides. So then they say down here, you should see the data. So if you're creating like a new RDS database here, you gotta create a database and kind of seeding and everything. Next step here. So now we're ready to kind of deploy. And to deploy, you do need a Jest account. So you want to go here, register for account, and then new users on their AWS account and get a 2-week basically trial period. So that should give plenty of time to see if you like it and try out everything. But now I'm just actually run the Jest deploy command. So Jest deploy, because I think I'm ready. Just run Jest deploy right there, and that's gonna say we'll deploy Rails-dev. And are you sure? Yes. Enter. And then now basically it's waiting to bootstrap your stack. So let's go actually to the I guess the AWS account here, the console. So here, and then let's go to CloudFormation. And here you can see Rails dev. So that's the same basically stack that's kind of being provisioned here. And you can also see here, you can click on here, the resources. The first thing Jest does is it bootstraps your CloudFormation or resources via CloudFormation. And the first resources creates is a S3 bucket that's going to help manage everything. And then also a co-build project. That co-build project is what's going to be managing the deployment actually. So I'm going to actually go back to the docs, because I think I explained this all in the docs right here. Basically, how does the Jest deployment work? First, what it does is it creates a bootstrap stack that creates this S3 bucket and the co-build project like we just saw. Then it packages up your code into a zip file and uploads it to this S3 bucket, and then kicks off the remote runner via co-build, okay? So it goes through co-build here, and then what co-build is going to do is going to analyze your code, and then it's going to use Docker to build all dependencies and deploy basically all these resources to your AWS account, okay? Resources like Lambda functions and other serverless resources here. And so let's see, it got past this phase already of sync bootstrapping, and then basically says started a remote run for deploy, Control-C will stop showing logs. So what basically is happening is the deployment happens right now it's happening on co-build right now. You actually click on this and then it can take you there. You can see the logs via there too, see? Okay, but it's the same logs here that are kind of streaming to your terminal. And it also says like if you Control-C, it's not gonna stop the deploy, it's only gonna stop logging, okay? So if you want to stop the deploy, you can run just stop, which just essentially is the same thing as clicking stop build here, okay? And but I'm gonna let it go, and you can see it's kind of building the Docker image. Then it pushed the Docker image, and now it's doing kind of a CloudFormation stack update again to create all the other necessary resources. So I'm gonna go here and click refresh. Now it's kind of updating. So we're gonna see shortly that's gonna create basically the controller and a pre-warm event resource here. There it is. It's coming here. So I think I'm gonna go back to these docs real quick and click on next step, because the docs explain it pretty comprehensively. What is doing is creating additional stacks, so those additional stacks can have like that can create the Lambda functions and everything else. And all these are kind of serverless components, okay? And it uses nested stacks to kind of get around CloudFormation quotas and limits here. So we're not gonna have any issues with quotas and limits in terms of like CloudFormation quotas and limits anymore. Okay, and then you can see that I'm just in the docs. I'm saying what you do is you can click on the resources here, and you can see the Lambda function that's being created, and you can actually see the console. And we're gonna do some testing here, like via actually CloudFormation, or not CloudFormation, via the Lambda console. But I have to wait until kind of this kind of finish creating here. So it did finish creating the controller, so I guess I could go ahead and click on that now. Let me go back here. Close that. Refresh this guy. The controller's done. The pre-warming is still great in progress. Now I can click on this. See, it's just showing all the resources here. You click on this. That takes you to the Lambda console. So what Jess did was it created a Docker image, and then it deployed your application as a Docker image, because you can see it right here, and actually push it to ECR repository, which it also kind of managed and created for us. Okay, now in here you click on test, and then now you're gonna have to create a test payload. Now this merits some explanations, but let me grab this first and I can explain it. Okay, there is the payload that we want, and throw in here, and sometimes it's helpful format JSON. Okay, so I'm gonna save this. So what this payload is when the user requests your Rails application, like through a browser or curl, is sending a payload to the Lambda function URL service. Okay, and you can think as the Lambda function URL service like a load balancer kind of. Okay, and that routes it to your Lambda function. Well, when that Lambda function URL service / load balancer routes it to the Lambda function, it's going to send an event, and that event looks like this. Okay, so that's what we're mimicking here. Okay, and I'm just explaining to you kind of what's happening underneath the hood to kind of help understand it. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm hit test here. So that's sending it, essentially kind of like faking it from the Lambda function URL service to the Lambda function, and it responds back with a payload that's compatible with the Lambda function URL service. So essentially that load balancer. Okay, and it's basically a hash structure with a status code, some headers, and essentially the body. Okay, so basically it's returned all green, so that's good, and that's how you would kind of test it from using the console. Now I know testing from the console is a little bit like awkward, right? So because of that, most people won't really be testing that. Most people will be testing it via, oh, and by the way, the deployment's done here via the URL. So if I just do jet URL, you can see it. You can also see the jet URL here at the end of deployment. So I'm gonna open this up, and you can see this is this is actually the release record that's created. Okay, but actually I'm gonna open the Lambda URL. Okay, so at the end of deployment, Jets creates like a release record to keep track of history and everything. Okay, but anyway, so I opened the Lambda function URL here, and you see this is actually the Rails application that we first tested locally, right? Running on Lambda now. You can go in here and click edit posts and all that kind of stuff. You can update it, go back here to more posts. And what I'm doing is I'm just testing it like a normal user would versus testing it like via the Lambda function. But I want to show you both so you can understand kind of what's kind of going on underneath the hood, okay? And then this command also is very useful. You go like, let me get rid of that. If you go jets log here, okay? And I'm going to open up another terminal here. Maybe drag it up here, and then go jets URL, okay? And then I'm going to grab that URL. So I'm gonna run this other command here to kind of grab the URL, okay? And then I'm gonna echo that URL, so you can see what it is. So I'm gonna curl that URL, and you can see on the bottom I ran jets. Let me Control C this and remind you what I ran. Jets log -f. So I'm following the logs from that. That's just on the function. Then I'm gonna just hit enter a couple times so you can see the spacing. Now I just curl the endpoint above. So down here on the logs, we're essentially getting centralized log built in. Okay, so in a couple of moments here, because it's essentially pulling CloudWatch logs, you can see the log came in. See, that's basically why I curl, and I could prove it even more so by kind of, I guess, going like this and going like, I don't know, foo equals bar with a question mark, like a query parameter, foo equals bar. Okay, and then so we can see the next request should be coming in soon. You're gonna see starting get, and then you're gonna see question mark foo equals bar right there. Okay, so that's kind of how that's another way to test it. So we just test it in the browser, we test it in the console. here I'm going through some docs here about updating the project and deploying it. I'm kind of skip through this here. Okay, and the last step is to delete the project. Okay, so everything has been kind of created successfully. We kind of refresh here. You can see that it has a controller and it has this kind of pre-warm event job too. So this kind of pre-warm event, all it really does is kind of keeps your Lambda functions hot. So then people don't kind of hit cold starts. And there's different ways to kind of do this, but this is all kind of done for us automatically via essentially creating a Lambda function and creating an event rule, which is kind of like a scheduler. It's like a serverless schedule in this serverless world. Okay. So the last step I'm gonna do is actually a delete. So I'm gonna go here, back here, and go jets delete. Okay. So it's gonna prompt us first. Are you sure you want to delete the project? So then it's like yes, enter. So it's gonna actually use the remote runner, package up your code to delete the project. Okay. So what's gonna happen is it's gonna first kind of actually go through like a bootstrap kind of deletion process. Once it kind of gets to that point right here, it's getting closer. And then after that, after basically removes essentially all of the nested stacks here, it's going to remove the parent stack at the very end, okay? And that does take a little time, but let me kind of refresh here. You can kind of see going through the first step now, right? And I think I also explained it in the docs here, so let me go check out right here. Yeah. This is how jets delete kind of works, okay? And the cool thing about kind of what we've done is jets essentially kind of codifies all your infrastructure components in like config jets. So when we are done with deletion, everything that we just created in this video is completely gone, and you're back to a clean slate essentially. Okay, so it's gonna take some time. So I'm going to come back once this is all done. Okay, so deletion finished. It took about 2 minutes and 11 seconds here to delete. And I'm just gonna show you in CloudFormation here, I guess, a refresh. There's no stacks left. This is just a stale kind of let me actually refresh the whole page. There you go. Okay, so you can see the stacks are all gone. And like I said, everything's completely clean to delete it. So we'll just click on now on the last step here, the next steps. So here are some next step links here for other things you can kind of do with jets here. And I'll probably cover this in additional videos and everything. But that's basically getting started guide with jets, and that shows you how to get essentially how easy it is to get Rails application running on serverless and AWS Lambda. Okay,